Hari Om. It appears that even though from my side it looks all a bit funny, I just checked. Hopefully, the video from your side isn't glitching. So I'm just going to start. If somebody is watching this, please send a message and tell me if it's fine. If it's really, really bad, I will just stop. Just send a little message if you're watching and just say, it's okay, it's fine. Then I'll just carry on. Okay. Hi, I'm Mathura Das. Welcome. Today is a very, hello Abdul. Hello there, my lovely friend from Pakistan, from Lahore. Um, how is the quality, Abdul? Is it okay? Can you just tell me? Good. Thank you, Abdul. That's great. Brilliant. Okay, I can relax now. I don't have to worry about what's happening on my side. I'm today, or yesterday, and part of today was Akshaya Tritiya, which is considered the most auspicious day in the whole of the Hindu calendar for starting new projects. And so I've opened a new page on my Facebook page called Between Worlds, which is the name of my book, which is about basically the story I've been telling everybody. And so I've been uploading all the videos from here, my timeline, onto there, so they're all in an order if you want to share them with anybody, and I'll put more details, and hopefully I'll put some pictures up and stuff like that soon when I get a bit more organized of all the characters involved in this incredible story I've been telling. So what I do on my I do some Om mantras, some prayers to my gurus. Then I do a chant and then a song from my that I've some songs I've done with my friend Pranaji and the Bindu Babas, and then I'm going to continue my talk, which is a long historical talk involved that comes to me, and it's about basically how did I, a boy from southwest London in the 70s, manage and end up with a name like Mathura Das, which is a Hindu name, and it's a big story. And I've been really enjoying talking about it because it's not just my story, it involves a whole generation, and I'm explaining about the history of a time and how things come about. So from a historical perspective, I'm just the kind of the sample member who's going through the story and kind of bearing witness to the experience of what's going on. So thank you, and I'm going to chant 3 Oms now and to tune in to the divine. In fact, one of my dear friends, Sarva Bhavana Prabhu, who's from India and a scholar and a great bhakta, he was telling to me that kind of when you chant Om, it's you kind of meditate that really the Om is there and you're just joining the Om, you're uniting with the Om in the mantra, even though it might be coming from your mouth. We're just kind of like, in a sense, channeling it. So that's the kind of mindset. Okay, thank you. Om Agyana Timirannasya Jananjana Salakaya Chakshun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swavadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sahagrajatam Sahaguna Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahaguna Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamsya He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Shri Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Pancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyayevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. I'm going to do a little bhajan now. Radha Ramana Hari Bol. Hi Janaki. Please, join in. It's call and response. And for those who don't know, Radha Ramana is one of the most beautiful deity forms of Krishna in the world, and worshipped with the most exquisite care and aesthetic sense of beauty in this tradition coming from Chaitanya. But originally from Gopal Bhatta Goswami, one of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan and disciples of Sri Chaitanya, who appeared in 1486, and the founder, original source of what's called the Hare Krishna movement and what is called traditionally in India as Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Okay, well, join with me and enjoy. Just going to change the key. So Jaya Radha Ramana Hari Bol, and there'll be some Radhas and some Radhishams and Hare Krishnas. Once we got tuned. Sorry. Trying to get started here. Jai Jai Radha Ramana Hari Bol. Jai Jai Radha Ramana Hari Bol. Jai Jai Radharamana 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 Hari Bol. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Jai Jai Radharamana 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 Hari Bol. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Jai Jai Radharamana 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 Hari Bol. Excuse me. Jai Jai Radharamana Hari Bol. 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 Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Jai Jai Radharamana Hari Bol. Jai Jai Radharamana Hari Bol. Radhe Radhe Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Radhe Radhe Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Radhe 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 Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Radhe 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 Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe. 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 Radhe Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Radhe Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Radhe 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 Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Radhe 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 Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Radhe Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Radhe Radhe. Radhe Shyam, Radhe Shyam, Shyam Shyam, Radhe Radhe. Radhe Krishna, Radhe Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Radhe Radhe. Radhe Shyam, Radhe Shyam, Shyam Shyam, Radhe Radhe. Radhe Krishna, Radhe Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Radhe Radhe. Radhe Shyam, Radhe Shyam, Shyam Shyam, Radhe Radhe. Radhe Krishna, Radhe Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Radhe Radhe. Radhe Shyam, Radhe Shyam, Shyam Shyam, Radhe Radhe. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Shri Radhe, 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 Radhe 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 Radhe, Jai Shri Radhe. Shalom. Bolo Krishna, Shri Krishna Bhagavan ki jai, Radharani Maharani ki jai, Vrindavan Dhama ki jai. Yesterday, one of the most influential members of the whole kind of Western Krishna movement passed away. Rather kind of a maverick and quite controversial, but had a big influence and went through a big story in his life, and he just passed away, Hansadutta. And even though I really wasn't a big fan of his, I do have a lot of respect for who he was, and especially in the latter part, he became very honest and kind of redeemed himself quite a lot by his honesty, and I offer all my respects for him, and he's definitely protected by Guru. Hari Om. So, okay, bless him. Well, bless you all. Bless everybody. I've been really enjoying doing these live shares. I've been enjoy telling the story because, like as I explained, the story explains much things about things. There's a lot of history, so there's a bit of education going on. It's not just a complete ego trip. So I'm going to sing a song now which is from our Bindu Babba's repertoire. Bindu Babba's is basically me and Prana who've written all the songs, and we've had different members. We had Assi on keyboards and Gilbert on sax. We've even had Alonzo and Paul from Kulashekar joining us sometimes on rhythm, and they helped us with our album. But today it's just me here, and I'm going to sing this song, which is about the nature of, I wake up every morning and I go, wow, really, it's like it's like almost like dying for me and being born every day. It's like, okay, new day, here we are, this is it. And life is a mystery, really. Even though one imagines that might know something about it, it always remains a mystery. People remain mysteries, and we remain mysteries even to ourselves. However kind of introspective we may think we are, there's all sorts of parts of ourselves that we haven't even connected with. So anyway, here is the song Life is a Mystery. And I do these funny noises with my mouth, so... bit gothic. Life is a mystery. Time passes by unseen. It's a miracle that we are here at all. Yet still out of the mud we crawl to rise to our destiny and discover our path, whatever it's gonna be, in a future we can see. Lost in the ocean of endless choices, lost in the ocean of endless choices, haunted by hundreds of millions of voices, just like a guru with loads of Rolls Royces and only one chauffeur who's reading James Joyce's book on the meaning of life, 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 life. I feel like the hero of 1,000 faces, gifts from the gods, but no shoelaces. Struggle with the jigsaw, feeling in the spaces, sorting through worlds of alien races. Whoa, whoa, what's going on now, 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 now? Life is a mystery. Time passes by unseen. It's a miracle that we are here at all. It's a bit slightly zany. Tryptamine DMT, that one. Thank you. Haven't sung that. Well, I sang it a few days ago, actually. God, this is my 10th share. And it's a long story. People, I don't know if anybody's watched the whole thing right from the beginning. It starts hundreds of years ago, and it's about the British Empire, India, Calcutta, certain characters, certain personalities, Bhaktivedanta Swami coming to America. That's the Krishna part of the story. And then there's the psychedelic ripple. And that's come from in the 40s in Sandoz laboratories. LSD is invented. It sweeps through the Western society, changes the 60s and the 70s. And that's where I get caught up in it. And the last part of my story on the last share was about this life-changing experience that happened to me, most probably in the very first days of September in 1973, because I was at a festival, at the Windsor Free Festival, a hippie festival, totally non-corporate, and it was the gathering of the tribes, a bit like the original one in San Francisco in January 1967. This kind of hippie dream, this hippie ethos, this way of coming together and sharing with music and love and food and getting high and all sorts of spiritual practices going on simultaneously, and celebrating the fact that we were a tribe, and we thought we were, people were kind of collectively tapping in, trying to get into positive things which were an alternative basically to the mainstream society that a lot of people, majority of all the young people, were very dissatisfied with. So in my last story, my last share, I had this incredible experience that involved LSD in it, that was a very, very psychologically challenging experience, and I was suffering really extreme anxiety. But it was it's only in retrospect in things in life that you look back and you go, wow, how that was just the perfect thing at the perfect time for what was meant to happen, because we're all attached to things in life, and if I hadn't had this kind of quite ego stripping kind of experience, what happened next may not have happened. And so I see it as all as part of the divine plan. And if you actually calculate the amount of time I went through this excruciating anxiety, it was most probably within an hour from the moment of ingesting it and stuff, and to the point where I had this transformative experience in the Krishna tent, sitting for hours and having kind of deep realizations about the philosophy that they were explaining, that was slightly, well, quite a bit different than a lot of the Indian teachings I'd been on. I'd been on this crash course of spirituality over a year and read lots and lots and lots of books on specifically Eastern spirituality, and started practicing. And then I encountered the Krishna devotees, and this teaching that Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada had brought from India is a branch of what's called Vaishnavism. And most of the other schools of yoga and the gurus were somehow connected more with a different lineage in India called Advaita. Which is a name for, it means one, so it means monism. And Gaudiya Vaishnavism is a form of mystical monotheism, but it's not the same as the Abrahamic monotheism, or it's a very different, because it accepts many, many varieties of different beings and different aspects of Godhead and different aspects of the Supreme Godhead as well. It's a very, very complex and very, very deep theological, philosophical tradition. And that is basically what Roberta Nandan, this Swami from America who was presenting these teachings at the Windsor Festival, and this is what he was able to share to his great credit, because he explained it very, very, very well. And there were some crucial things that I explained yesterday. And one of them that was kind of an amazing turning point was the fact that I am not God. And God is not just light. He may be light, and God may be everything, and I am, and God is within me and with everything. But there is a distinction, and that was very, very apparent, and it's very apparent to this day. And I often wonder why people don't. Anyway, I feel it is one of my services to my guru, who was called Bhakti Vedanta, that it was a title, and it's a very I love that title, and I'm attracted. I like the the whole goal of Vedanta and philosophy is to bring one to devotion and bhakti to the Supreme Lord, but it doesn't reject knowledge. They support each other and run parallel, and that's what I love about this specific tradition and the presentation. And it was the power of Bhaktivedanta Swami's adherence to this tradition that he carried with him that made that what he gave, it had a lot of weight because it carried this whole tradition with him. And then he taught his other devotees. And on this day, I could actually feel Robertananda Swami, who'd been trained and lived in India, who had absorbed these teachings, and he was kind of serving these teachings, and they kind of came through him. And especially when there was a recital of a Sanskrit text as a reference, it just did have this authority, and I found that very, very compelling. One of the things that I hadn't talked about yesterday was that behind the scene, because I'm going to carry on my personal story, because most of the story has actually been a story bigger than myself, involving characters and personalities that were changing things. And most notably were the Beatles earlier on, and specifically George Harrison. And I was just looking up dates today because I thought, oh goodness, I haven't mentioned that. while I was going through this whole process in the late 60s and the early 70s, the Beatles also kind of split up. So the Beatles broke up in April 1970, just as a bit of a timeline. And the second single from the Radha Krishna album that I saw on Top of the Pops, which is beautiful and has become classic and played all over the world in all the Krishna temples every morning, is the song Govinda. So there we were. We'd heard this Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And now we heard this Govindam, Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. And that repeated. And it was a very lovely composition. And there was an interview with a devotee on television, was the first one I'd seen, about who was Govinda. And then I realized it was Krishna. And so that was going on. And then George Harrison, after the Beatles broke out, George was the first one to really kind of go for it. He'd been a kind of bit suppressed, being the kind of the third writer of music in the Beatles. And he had all these songs stocked up. Most albums, he was only really allowed a couple of songs. But he actually wrote most probably a couple of the best tracks on Abbey Road, their kind of last album, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, and something. And Here Comes the Sun, Here Comes the Sun, and While My Guitar, and something. They're acknowledged as some of the best tracks ever written by the Beatles, but with George Harrison, he was really coming into his own. And he was having a lot of association with the Beatles, because after they moved from John Lennon's house, they moved over to George Harrison's new house called Friar Park in Henley. And George Harrison needed a bit of help because it was a massive house, and so they got free lodgings. They stayed there. Shyama did a few things for George and everything. After some time of living with George, it was great, and they got on well. And this is where George got lots of the ideas of the songs that he was writing for All Things Must Pass, including My Sweet Lord, Beware of Darkness, and all those songs. They were all inspired by the devotees and what he was coming. Even Here Comes the Sun is an allusion to this kind of the thawing of all of this anxiety and build-up and tension that have been there in the final days of the Beatles, that you can see in the movie Let It Be, where they're all kind of it's a bit tense. It's all going tense. Now George was free to do what he wanted to do, and he was deeply into spirituality and specifically Krishna, and he wanted to do what he could, being George Harrison. And so then also in 1971, there was this big war between Bangladesh and East Pakistan and West Pakistan. And East Pakistan became Bangladesh, and the Indian army came in, saved the day. The West Pakistan army retreated after doing all sorts of heinous things, but there was lots and lots of refugees, a lot of them Hindus, that were escaping from Bangladesh to India, millions of them, or thousands. And Ravi Shankar came to George Harrison and said, can we do something to help the people? And so they put on this big concert in Madison Square Gardens. And it's fantastic. He managed to get Eric Clapton and Bob Dylan. I don't know if he got Bob Dylan, but he got Leon Russell and tons of really great musicians. And he does My Sweet Lord, and it's fantastic. And My Sweet Lord became the #1 single everywhere in 1971. It was the most popular single, and it was goes through a kind of gospely kind of My Sweet Lord kind of lilt, and then it goes into hallelujahs and then into Hare Krishna, and that's, for many people, that was where they first kind of chanted inadvertently with that rather than the Radha Krishna album, so it was spreading. And then as that was going on just before this Windsor festival, this was like in September, late August 73, earlier in the year, George had produced another album. He was really on it. All Things Must Pass was a triple album. It was, nobody had done anything like that. And Concert for Bangladesh, which had Indian music on it, had 3 albums. And now he did Living in the Material World. And it was blatantly, all the songs were about his experience with Krishna and the Krishna consciousness. And he had the picture from ISKCON, painted by Badraj, of Krishna and Arjuna, that had been on the front cover of the Bhagavad Gita, printed by Macmillan at that time. But he had got permission and used it on the inside cover. They had these fantastic song, Give Me Love, Give Me Life, Give Me Peace on Earth, Give Me Hope, Help Me Cope with This Heavy Load, and Trying So Hard to Reach You with My Heart and Soul. And then songs about living in the material world, Met John and Paul in the material world. But from the spiritual sky, sweet memories do I have by his grace, Sri Krishna, I will get out of the material world. I've forgotten the exact words, but that was the message: living in the material world and returning to the spiritual world. So he was coming out with his whole Krishna thing, not just with the Krishna devotees, but himself. And so that was just going on behind the scenes that summer in 1973. Give Me Love was playing on the radio. I must admit, I hadn't really listened to it because none of my friends had the album, but I heard the singles. So there I am. Okay, that was just a little recap, just to give you an idea of what was happening behind the scenes, because I hadn't actually mentioned the progress of George Harrison and the connection with the Beatles at that time, especially George. The continued association, quite a lot, and so the days after I had this big experience with the devotees at the Windsor Festival, I kept just going back to their tent and checking them out. Because as much as the philosophy was interesting, I thought, well, I need the people who are doing it. It's very important. What are they like? And I was just observing them, and I've been very impressed by the talk by Rohini Nandan, and they all did look very kind of pure. What can I say? And I was checking their kind of the way they I used to just kind of sit there, and there were people that were sitting, and different devotees would come, and Ananda actually came and talked to me, and was very friendly, and they all were inviting us, when they talk, and they could see that you were kind of open for things. And I didn't get any kind of fanatical discussions. It was all very light-hearted, and they were asking me about me, and I asked them questions, and they were inviting everyone to go to the new place they got just outside Watford. And I basically made up my mind that was what I was going to do. And when I would leave them, I would go back to my tent, where there was a few of my friends left, because the festival had gone on and on. Quite a few people had gone. The festival had thinned down, and we were kind of like waiting for the very last days to go. And funnily enough, this guy came into our tent who was wearing a Union Jack flag, and he had the melody Hare Krishna. I had actually picked it up on the guitar. So, excuse me, I learned that melody and immediately started chanting it on the guitar. And then we decided it's time to go. So we packed up. It was actually a really nice summer's day. There were lots and lots of police. checking. That after that early bit in the festival, when the police had intermingled, we'd heard that there was a few people had been picked up and kind of by the police and searched, but we didn't really have a problem. We there was maybe 3 or 4 of us in our gang that went off, and we got to Windsor, and then I made a phone call because my parents hadn't heard from me for over a week. I'm doing a share, dude. Okay. Sorry. I hope it's okay. I hope the share's going on okay. Um, um, I got to the phone booth at the Windsor Festival, and maybe, excuse me. Oh, anyway, I'm just going to carry on. If he calls, if I get called back again, I'm hoping this all is all looking okay. I've been told by Abdul that it does look okay. Sorry, wait a minute. Okay, that's fine. Okay, sorry for that. Okay, I'm at the Windsor station. I go to the phone box, the booth there, and I call up my mum. Now, okay, this is like the first few days of September. The festival's gone from the end of August into we slipped into the first few days and college, I've got accepted into Isleworth Polytechnic and kind of scheduled in the next week or so to kind of go there. So, and here I am. I'm not 17 yet. I'm at this festival. My mum's really cool. I've gone to other things before. Um, and I pick up the phone, I call her, and she goes, "Hi, Mark." And I go, "Hi, Mum. Everything fine? Had a good festival?" "Yes, Mum. It was great. Really, really good." Well, and then she immediately said, "Well, that's nice. That's great." I said, "We're just going to kind of drop off the tarpaulin at my friend's house, and I'll come back later, or maybe I'll stay there the night and come tomorrow." And she said, "Okay, but make sure you come back soon because you've got to get ready for college, and you know." And then I kind of paused for a little bit. And then I said, "Yeah, yes." And this is the bit where must have really freaked my mum out because I said, "Yeah, but well, I'm not quite sure, Mum. The thing is, I've met these people," and I didn't even finish the sentence. And my mum says, "What? What are you talking about? Met people? What people? What are you talking about?" And I said, "Well, I met these Hare Krishnas, and I'm thinking of going to visit their place." And just, "What are you talking about? This is, look." "Come home shortly. We need to talk to you. And I said, "Yes, Mum. Speak to you soon." And I put the phone down and I went, "Oh God, why did I say that then?" And can you imagine 16-year-old son having problems with education? They're not really sure. There's all the struggle to get into college, and then I go off to this festival, and I've taken the most strong mind-altering substance in the world, and she knows I've probably dabbled in LSD. And what's the worst fear of every parent in that situation? That you meet some strange exotic cult and come under their influence. So that was I mean, "Oh, you pretty things, don't you know you're driving your mamas and papas insane?" It was what a song by David Bowie. It's basically the theme of the ages at that time, at least with me and us younger people. We were stretching things so far, and especially people like me who were quite young. Some people go, "My goodness, how do your parents, deal with that? All that kind of freedom of as a rebelliousness and that different, okay, non-conformity." So then things started to get a little bit strange in my psychological world, really, because I've been in this cocoon at this festival and in this Hare Krishna thing and free. Then suddenly, when you get out and you're in the kind of straight world, you start looking at everything, and everything's a little bit different. Everything's a bit kind of challenging and not so friendly. Anyway, we got back to my friend's house, And as soon as we got there, I just wanted to get the guitar out and sing Hare Krishna. And as soon as I sang Hare Krishna, this kind of unease feeling that I was having kind of went, and I just felt plugged into everything. And then I put the guitar down, and they went off to get something. We started talking, and I started to get all weird again. And I just picked up the guitar and started chanting. And this kind of started to I kept repeating this pattern this first day. And I think everyone was looking at me a bit strange because I'd never behaved a bit like this, and I was looking at myself, and it was a very peculiar feeling. So then I get home, and then it's, whew, I can't really remember much about it, but I can just remember it being. My father didn't take it well at all about what I told them. I brought this magazine from the devotees had a Rath Yatra festival in London that summer, and they'd made a special magazine, and I brought it, and it had the recipe of halva in it. And I was just really eager. And I got all the ingredients and I made it, and I did a little offering. I followed the whole thing that they said in the book. And things started to get really weird because something had been turned on inside of me from that experience. And I actually, within days, I mean, tobacco, I've been very big with the tobacco thing and everything. And I was thinking, how am I going to get to this Bhaktivedanta Manor? When am I going to go there? And then one day, I just kind of saw my Golden Virginia tobacco, and I kind of watched myself go to the bin and throw it. And I went, wow, just threw my tobacco away. And then I think and I didn't smoke any pot or anything for a couple of days. And I went into this very kind of Krishna conscious mode. First time I read the magazine and got into, that's it. I went over to my friend Bob's in Grosvenor Road, the one who taught me yoga, Bob the Beard, and I wanted to borrow some more literature. And he had the Krishna book that had been published in a trilogy, which is Bhaktivedanta Swami had gone to the 10th skanda of the Srimad Bhagavat, this literature, and did a summary study and turned it into a story, all the story of Krishna's avatar and his leelas, called the Krishna Book. And George Harrison had given initially $20,000 to have the whole thing printed, with a little beautiful introduction from him. But my friend didn't have volume 1, he had volume 2, but I borrowed that. And I think I borrowed another magazine. He had another Back to Godhead magazine on it, which had a picture of the Panchatattva, Sri Chaitanya and his associates, and this lovely picture of Radha and Krishna on the inside cover. And I took those away, and I just had them with me for 2 days, and I hardly listened to music. I just deeply studied all of these things and read. And then my mate, Gordon, came over, hadn't seen me for days. They were wondering what had happened to me. And he came up to my bedroom, and I was kind of going, yeah, I don't, I've stopped smoking, I've done all that. And he was going, yeah, right, sure, knowing me. And he just sit there, and we put some music on, and he rolled a joint with tobacco and some very good Moroccan hash, which I was very attached to and loved the aroma and the smell. And he sat there and he just smoked and kind of blew it at me, it's like taunting me. That's really what he was doing, as a kind of naughty friend. And I succumbed because I suddenly thought, it still smells quite good, and I'm still quite attached to this. Let me just try an experiment. I've been straight for a few days and everything. So I took some puffs on the joint, and I got really stoned immediately, really, really strong. And I had this interesting realization almost instantly about how when, it kind of works on many levels, hash. It kind of allowed my senses to kind of marry with the sense objects. And before that, I could kind of almost kind of stay a bit detached, but this allowed me to kind of merge with the sense objects a little bit. And I thought, that's interesting. We got the munchies, we went downstairs, we thought, let's watch a bit of television for some reason, and we put on this stupid series called Please Sir. And while we were watching it, I just remember everything started going fast, and then suddenly I felt like I had an acid flashback, that feeling of fear that I got at the Windsor Festival before I went through my transformation. And I suddenly was sitting there and everything started to go a bit funny. And I just said to Gordon, excuse me, I've just got to go back upstairs. I'm not feeling that good. And I went back upstairs and boom, I just got my guitar out. Hare Krishna. I actually had this tune, A minor, down to B minor, backwards to Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare. And I went up there and you know, a few minutes later, kind of Gordon came up, opened the door and just looked at me. And I kind of looked at him, chanting Hare Krishna, and he said, okay, see you, Mark. And I was off on my thing. He could see I was off on some weird trip that he couldn't understand what was happening. I couldn't understand what was happening. Now, something quite interesting happened, and it's strange how you can remember dreams from years and years ago. Well, this is one. There was a couple of dreams I had now. I went to sleep, and in the sleep, I had a nightmare, actually. And it was just the end part of it was my best mate, Chris, coming across a field towards to see me. And as he gets closer, he suddenly starts transforming into this monster. And I'm riveted. And he gets closer and closer. And as he got I woke up panting. And I went... And I had this thing came through my mind. There's no shelter in this world, not even in your dreams, I thought. Right. And then I got this magazine, and there was the picture of Radha and Krishna. And I just prayed, and I said, I give up. I surrender. I am yours. I kind of offered myself then at that moment, closed the magazine and went back to sleep and had this other dream. And I've talked a lot about the Beatles. They've had, and many people in the world, the Beatles represent some kind of, they have kind of archetypal, they've entered into the archetype resonance of the planet into people's minds. And lots of people feel they have a very close relationship with them. At that time, I was, you know, I'd always been quite attached to Paul and everything. But anyway, in my dream, I'm suddenly kind of, the Beatles are there coming along in a big car, I think a Rolls Royce. And at least there's Ringo, there's Paul, John, Paul, and George. And I get into the car and we're just sitting there like mates, and we're kind of like driving along. And then George suddenly, I can't remember what we were talking about, but it was a really lovely vibe, very up. And suddenly the car stopped outside a kind of circus marquee, and George says, I think you should check this out, it's really good, I think you'll really like it. And I got out and I went into this marquee, and there was all the seats going around and levels going up, and there was a stage, and I sat down and people came in there, and right in front of me there was one person who was different to the others, and was quite grave and was kind of facing there, and I had this feeling that this is maybe the director of the show. And then the devotees came on this stage, and they were funnily enough dressed in green cloth, and it was very, as dreams are, strange, but they put on a show, and the show was about what is Maya or illusion. And it was a it was almost like a Cirque du Soleil, kind of simple, but a simple version where they put on this drama. And it was basically explaining that Maya, the illusory power of this world, is a bit like a kind of cosmic, seductive advertising agency, bombarding, have this, take this, do this, this is how it works. It bombards the senses until you're just kind of submerged in it and you lose yourself. And and then they finished their show. The audience walked out, and I was just sitting there thinking, I don't actually want to go with these people, actually. And I was just sitting there, and the person in front of me walked down and joined the devotees, and they just decided to walk off. And I was looking at them I kind of wanted to go, but I didn't know how to. I didn't know how you suddenly kind of join this group of people. What did you have to do? And up until, and as they were walking away, I was looking, one of the devotees kind of like looked around and saw me and said to the person that was next to them, there's somebody there, looks like they want to come with us. And then the person was there, looked around, and it was Prabhupada, who I'd never met. I'd just seen his photograph. Specifically, I'd looked a lot at the photograph on the back of the Krishna book, and it was that face that turned around. And he said, yes, and he can come too. And I woke up in this incredible feeling, absolutely amazing. You wake up and you go, "What? Wow, that just happened. That was a dream." And I think actually after that dream that day, I said, "This is this. I'm off to the Manor." So all I knew was I had this address, and I knew that it was near Watford, and I had to get all the way, the quite convoluted way, in a bus, which I can't remember how I did it, but I think I maybe even got a green line. It took me to Watford. I couldn't figure. Nobody said there was no kind of buses in those days, or I couldn't figure out one going to Lechmore Heath. And it was a gorgeous day, a summer day. And I had my little rucksack on. I had my kind of this kaftan thing that I had on with mirrors, and my patched jeans and a couple of clothes. And I was very nervous and excited. And I was, kind of went off. And Lechmore Heath is in a village, and you have to walk down some country lanes. And as I was getting closer and closer, I was thinking, I wonder what it's going to be like. I wonder whether, I was just thinking like this, but I was chanting, and and then I got there to the village, and there were these ornate gates, and it said Pigott's Manor. And I went in, and there was this kind of mock Tudor house, big mansion with these kind of rhododendrons around in the garden. And I was kind of looking around, and there was an entrance there, and I just kind of went into the porch, and I knocked on the door, and a devotee opened, whose name I found out later was Diranga. And he was very friendly. He said, "Hello, Haribol, Hare Krishna." I went, "Hello." And I felt really good. He had this lovely, friendly vibe. And I said, I just met the devotees at the Windsor festival, and they were inviting people to come. And so I've come to, I like, chanting, and I like Krishna. And he said, "Wonderful." He said, "Come in." He said, "Put your bags here." He says, "Would you like to kind of help in the kitchen, because we're going to have food shortly, and it'll be wonderful." And I just walked in, put my bag down, and right next to there was a door, and I just walked in, and there was all these devotees cooking, and I'd never, it was a fantastic feeling. And I went over to the pot washing, and I don't know if Janaki is still watching at the moment, but that's where I met Mohan. Mohan was there, and for some reason or other, Mohan always reminded me of Ringo Starr, and he had a kind of that little Bill accent, and he was from up there, and we went in there washing pots, and he was very friendly, and he knew all the songs from Living in the Material World that I hadn't even really heard yet, and he was singing them and talking to me about Krishna while washing the pots. And then it was time to go and have prasadam, and I had my first prasadam with the devotees, and it was interesting. It was a bit like being at school for the first day, and then kind of going into the dining room and being the newie there. It was quite exciting, but everyone was friendly, and we all sat down on the floor. And it was quite simple, the food, but it was very tasty. And at that time, what had happened is Bhaktivedanta Manor had been purchased. This is like September, and they'd had it since spring, late spring. And the devotees, the only centre before that in London was the one in Bury Place in the centre of London. But so many devotees had come there to get it ready, and Prabhupada had come. It's most probably one of the longest times he ever spent in one temple in the West. I think the other time was in Los Angeles, which was called the international kind of headquarters of the Krishna movement. But here, it was a new thing in Europe, and the devotees had become very close to Prabhupada by having him there for so many months. Can you imagine? It was every day giving classes and lectures, and there's all these beautiful pictures of him sitting on the lawn in the summer. And they were getting prepared to install Radha, the deities that were going to become Radha Gokulananda. They had the Radha Krishna deities in London, and now they're going to install some more. And there's all these wonderful pictures of Prabhupada walking around when they were kind of fixing up the kind of the temple room. And some of my close friends, Vimukta Sangha specifically, was very much involved in things at that time. And but when I got there on this day, which was most probably a week or so into kind of September, Prabhupada had actually gone for a break to Stockholm. So when I arrived, he wasn't there. And so I was there for about 2 or 3 days, and I spent most of my time, when I wasn't going through the morning program and chanting, and helping in the kitchen, cutting vegetables, which was a wonderful spirit. And there was a real buzz in the air. The devotees in the manor had the community had grown over these years. They had quite a lot of devotees. They'd also had started centres in Manchester, and ones they'd started up in Scotland, and the devotee community had grown, and so they definitely needed more space. And so they had this wonderful space that George Harrison had kind of offered. The devotees had looked for it, and he'd okayed it, and they'd given the deposit, and now they had it. And now Prabhupada was there. There's fantastic videos of when Prabhupada's circumambulating all the devotees going around Radha Gokulananda when they've been installed, and Ananda is there, Roberti Nandan, and then Tulsidas, and many of the devotees who were in Amsterdam that I was going to meet later had come, and Paris. It was it's ecstatic, and Prabhupada is dancing. It's one of the classic bits of footage of Prabhupada with his devotees, obviously beaming. This was the great hope that he had ever since he was young, and then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati specifically, of spreading in the West, but this thing with England, because England had been such a dominant force over India, and now it was kind of the turn for Prabhupada to come back and offer the jewel from India, their knowledge, to the English-speaking people, and with pride, that we're not beggars or something, like we haven't come just to get a job, we're actually giving you something from our culture. And it was a great moment for in the history of the East-West story and Gaudiya Vaishnavism. It was absolutely wonderful. And I went through. What Prabhupada came from Stockholm, and I was quite nervous about kind of what do you do? I didn't know the etiquette. Not only that, when I actually arrived, after I'd worked in the kitchen later on that day, I actually went into the temple room in the afternoon just to sit, because the Dhiranga has said there's a Bhagavad Gita in the temple room that you can read. And I went in there, and there was this fantastic painting on the wall that Gopal, who had done the covers for Quintessence, had done, life-size, and it was so well done that you really feel the presence of Prabhupada. And this was all very new for me, because I was just doing what everyone else did. And there was a lot of bowing down going on. I'd never even gone into a church or anything and crossed myself or done any of that stuff, whatever people do. It's never been. Now, I'd only just got my head around the idea of there being a God. And now, not only was there there's a God, but there's a spiritual teacher, and a human being in the embodiment as the representative of God. And that was all very new for me. And then going to the altar, bowing down at the altar, and then there was a seat called the Vyasasan, where devotees did their respects when Prabhupada wasn't there. There was a photograph there. And so I went in there, and this was all very, very new for me. So just that, from photographs and images and bowing down. And so I was a bit, nervous, really. That was, and also shy and didn't really know what to know. And I was very young. I was the youngest person definitely there, in the whole kind of visiting. And I didn't have all the devotee uniform and everything. And he arrived in a white car, and then when he got out, all the devotees were dancing, and I was standing at the back, and there was flowers, and it was all wonderful. And then everybody just kind of did their respects. I paid my respects, and then Prabhupada kind of went into the temple room and offered his respects, and I think we all went in there. But then quite quickly he went up to his room, and so we heard. They were Prabhupada was very tired. He was very exhausted, big journey, and he was going to go, and they said, he'll meet the devotees tomorrow, and he went up to his room. So everybody kind of calmed down and went off back to their services. And I think that it could have been that evening where they actually, because we've been sitting and preparing this massive, big feast. In celebrating, lots of devotees had come from Europe. It was full, the Manor, to see Prabhupada. And that evening, we had this feast, and it was the first proper feast I'd ever had. And that's where I'd already fallen in love with prasadam. But that's when you got all these classic ISKCON subjects with fried aubergine and fried cheese, paneer, and creamy sauces and different vegetables and chutneys. And I remember there was this devotee from Holland called Benkadesh, who was sitting next to me, and we were talking, and he was explaining what the different preparations were. And everyone was just so friendly, and the vibration, the mood of all the devotees was just incredible. This group thing with the intensity of the spiritual vibe at that time was incredible. And then I didn't know what was going on, what the plans were, how long Prabhupada was going to be there. The next morning, I was just sitting in the morning during the japa period. And the japa period is when the devotees do their rosaries, and they're called a japa mala, and they chant to their the mantra meant to be to themselves. And it can be quite a bizarre spectacle to watch a lot of Krishna devotees, especially in those days, in the temple room doing their japa quite loudly, and everybody, some people were walking around, some people had their heads against the door, somebody was sitting down, and it was bizarre, really. Even to this day it's a bizarre thing. And I just sat down in a lotus position and I was chanting. I didn't have any beads. I don't think anybody gave me beads. So I was just chanting with my hands, just kind of chanting the mantra. And then suddenly a garland came over me, and I looked up, and it was Roberta Nandan, the Swami who'd kind of heard the talk from at the Krishna festival. And he looked at me with a big smile, and they'd obviously, people had, because he'd gone traveling and just come back, and people had said, look, there's this guy, he's told us that, you've given the talk, and it's, and so he could recognize me as well from the festival. He said, Hare Krishna. He says, I'm going to tell you something, that you can go on a walk now. Prabhupada is just going on a walk now, and I'm not telling everybody, but And I said, oh really? What do you do? How do you get your things? And he said, look, just go out there, get your clothes, get your shoes, and they're going out the front now. So I had my shoes somewhere, can't remember. Got my shoes, went round, and there they were, just a small group, maybe 10 maximum devotees, 10 devotees, walking out of the gate into the village of Lechmore Heath with all these big trees and this kind of little. They're very dark in the morning. The sun hadn't risen, and it was very dense from all the trees. And I didn't know what to expect, and we just walked. And Prabhupada was at the front. I think Hansaduta was there, bless his soul. And we were walking, and all I remember was people kind of wanted to start a conversation, and Prabhupada was just kind of, yeah. Kind of, that was, he didn't, you could see he wasn't really in a chitter chatty mood, but you could hear the cane. And there was all this foliage hanging over the road, and it was quite dark. And then we got to the end of the village, and then we all turned round. It seemed to be light, and we went into a field. And we just stood there at the edge of the field, and that's when Prabhupada kind of stopped, and we were all kind of around him. And then he kind of like just glanced like that. And when he came to me, I was very demure. I couldn't look him in the eyes. I just kind of put my hands down, my head down, and then I looked back immediately, and it was Prabhupada was just a couple of feet away, and this is the closest I'd seen Prabhupada, and I actually kind of, it was just this amazing feeling. He didn't have an aura like a light, but the energy that was coming from him that was clear. I can't describe it. And it was the complexion of his body, and everything just seemed to be, and the movements, many people have mentioned this, the way he moved his head and his hands was, it was some other kind of energy that was permeated his whole kind of physical being. I mean, from a bhakti point of view, it is his whole life, and every thought and deed is saturated in Krishna consciousness, and every atom and molecule of the body is going to be transfigured, really, into, even though it appears to be matter, it is actually kind of spiritual. And he looked very golden, and he had these very long features and distinctive lips and everything, and it was quite stunning. I was really bowled over, basically, and it was very sweet as well. It wasn't intimidating. It was very light. It must have been so difficult for Prabhupada to relax and be, keep the, well, it wasn't difficult, it was natural for him. But you often think how he managed to keep the poise and all the time surrounded with so many people, and they were all there because of him. And then we went back to the manor, and then Prabhupada gave the first kind of talk I ever saw him on. I saw the structure of how they did it formally, where they wrote the Sanskrit on a piece of on a board, and I think Pradyumna was there, and Shruti Kirti was there. Pradyumna was the kind of Sanskrit expert and assistant to Prabhupada, travelled everywhere, and Shruti Kirti was his servant. He looked immaculate and very well presented, Shruti Kirti. And you could see that Pradyumna, he was scholarly, he had that vibe about him. And they went through this process of people repeating the verse around. And I was just completely absorbed in the whole thing. I thought it was incredible. And then that went on, and then Prabhupada started talking. But to be quite honest, I found that the beat again, his accent was quite thick, and I wasn't used to it. I'd never heard it. I couldn't really follow everything, but it was just I was seeing the energy and the exchange between all the devotees and the atmosphere. And then Prabhupada would crack a joke, and he had the gold teeth, and you'd see the shine, and then he would laugh and chuckle, and all the devotees would laugh, and I would laugh with them, and not really knowing what it was about, but it was a lovely atmosphere. And so that was, I saw a couple of those, and then they had, before the class, they had the Guru Puja. Now, I watched this for quite a couple of days, and basically on one side of the temple room near the entrance, you had lots of devotees, and then they went over onto the other side and lined up, and right near the seat where Prabhupada was, there was somebody held a basket with flowers, and you queued up, took the flowers, and you did the ceremony of offering flowers. And that again, this whole thing of offering flowers and bowing down, and it was all very new for me. And Duranga, who had been kind of looking after me, and he was my connection, kept checking out how I was on this one. And then, you know, kind of after a couple of days of watching this, I was watching it. He just kind of pushed me away from there, and I was kind of away, and I couldn't really go back. And so I thought, okay, I'm meant to do this. I walked over, and I was in the queue, and it was getting closer and closer and closer to me. And I took the flowers, and then I offered them very, very demurely. Again, there's this word demure. I looked it down, and I just copied what everybody offered, the flowers, and I did what everybody did, this thing called dandavats, which means, danda means a stick. It means to lie fully flat, not just bowing your head, but full with the hands out. And I went down and did that, and I didn't know any prayers, but I actually did offer a prayer in my mind, and it was, I asked him, Prabhupada, to accept me as his disciple. Please accept me as your disciple. I want to be your student. And I just said, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, because that's all I knew. And then I stood up, and as I stood up and as I walked away back, there was this kirtan had been going on and building up. Roberta Nandan was leading it. And of all the kirtans that I'd heard so far, this was electric. There was an atmosphere in the mood in the temple that day. And I just kind of got this, as I was sitting there, I actually got this shot of energy going up the back of my spine, up the top of my head. And I was dancing. It was the first time I'd really, really, really danced there at the mat in the kirtan there. And that was quite a big turning point for me. Also, apart from in the kitchen, I've been going through the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita, the first chapter was a bit challenging because I couldn't quite figure it all. I didn't know the background. It's all about the setting because Bhagavad Gita is a section from the Mahabharata, which is a great epic dealing with Krishna's avatar, involving kings and heroes and gods and chivalry. And I didn't know all that. I didn't quite understand the context. But then, and I mentioned that to Duranga, he says, I'm having a little bit of a problem with that. He says, look, if you are, just bear with it and then get to the second chapter. The actual spiritual dialogue starts there after. I went, okay. And then when I got to that, then I started to get into the flow. And so I was reading Bhagavad Gita, slowly going through it and absorbing. And I was absorbing all the devotees as well. And there were certain things that I was concerned about that were going on. And in the sense that I could see, I don't know, this is my personal experience, this is my story, everyone's got a different story. This whole thing of checking out the devotees and the organization was crucial because still I had this opportunity of possibly going to college. And I hadn't decided what I wanted to do yet. I was sussing this out. And then I noticed there wasn't just kind of one type of devotee. There was a hierarchy going on. Different people had different kinds of temperaments, different kinds of moods. And I had some interesting discussions with some devotees. I'm going to go into every detail because it's all in my book. And it's going to come out, and you can get into all the, all the details are there. But what happened was Prabhupada was leaving, going back to India after being there. And so it was the last day that he was there, it came up. And during that Guru Puja, Charan Aravindam, the very first devotee who I've met in Trenti Show Festival, who did the exotic dances, he used to go off on a mission and find these beautiful lilies and special flowers and bring them and offer them. And he did this incredible dance in front of Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was just beaming. And afterwards, he kind of gave it to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada looked at it, blessed it, gave it back to Charan Aravindam, who just danced in ecstasy, and he does. I remember the petals from the flower and everybody going mad. And then there are two versions of this. There's one version that somebody remembers, but in my mind, what happened is Prabhupada got off the Vyasa and devotees went crazy. And then somebody said, Prabhupada's leaving to India today. And I went, wow, okay. And everybody went out of the door, everyone really ecstatic and kind of emotional. It's not dissimilar for when Krishna leaves Vrindavan and goes to Mathura, because everyone was so attached to Prabhupada. I think everyone was a bit in shock. I mean, that he's actually going. They won't see him for a while. And then he got into the car and then he went off. And then it was like, wow. And then I suddenly noticed already that evening, lots of devotees had gone, the population had thinned down, many people had gone back to Europe, and I suddenly was stuck there. Not stuck there, but I was there, and it had changed the mood. It had reached this climax, and it had thinned out, and then there was this quandary that I was still in about, what do I want to do? I want to be part of this community here. I was really, I was very, very kind of convinced about everything. I'd like the theory of it all. I was getting closer and closer to more understanding about it, getting some really good experiences. But there have been certain things in the temple, and bless his soul, Hansadutta, who just passed, I was mentioning, he was there, and he was giving a kind of, in one room, devotees to them, he was explaining about how to sell literature and do things, and I was watching all that aspect of the Krishna thing, and my friend Bob, who I'd learnt yoga from, I asked him, and he said, I like the Krishna chanting and the thing, but they're very pushy. And he says that can be a real put off, and they're, because, they're the children of God and people go around preaching. And I thought, yeah, that's, I'm not really into all that kind of part of it. And I noticed that was a part of it, and something else had happened, but I won't get into that in this story. And so I was not sure, really, and I realized that the community vibe at the Manor hadn't really 100% jive for me. I was a bit kind of disappointed because they'd advertised it as a Vedic community, and I had expected it to be a bit more creative. And then there was this top-heavy thing, this emphasis of going on the streets and giving out the literature, and that all seemed to be the main focus. And I thought it was going to be a bit more cultural and creative. And so I got into a talk one day with this one devotee called Sanatan. And I'd observed him, and he used to chant his japa sitting in the corner like a monk, and just sat in one position. And I thought, he's good. He's into meditating. And he had a little tattoo on his hand, and I knew that was the signature for the League for Spiritual Discovery, Timothy Leary's thing. It was a kind of little psychedelic kind of, I know where you're at. And he seemed an interesting guy. So we got into a talk, and I told him about my quandary about, I like Krishna and everything. I said, is there any other communities in different places, or, different things with this, is this the only place where one can go and practice? And he says, well, I've got something here that you might be interested in. Now, what had happened was, because Prabhupada had been at the Manor, different devotees coming from all over the place. This devotee who I'd mentioned earlier, who was one of the very first Krishna devotee called Kulashekar, he was now in Amsterdam in the Christian temple, and he'd come over, and he was kind of recruiting for devotees to go over to Amsterdam, and he'd put a notice on the notice board, and I hadn't noticed that, but apparently what had happened was some of the managers there, they were a bit upset because he'd been recruiting and wanted to get people, so out of anger somebody had taken it and thrown it on the floor. And this devotee, Sanatan, who I was talking to, had seen it earlier and thought it was interesting, saw it on the floor, and something compelled him to pick it up and put it in his bag. This is how weird how destiny works, okay? So I'm sitting there talking to him, and he says, I have something in my bag that you might be interested in. and it was this crumpled piece of paper, really, just crumpled up. And I stretched it out, I remember, and it suddenly said at the top in big letters, "Come to the happy Amsterdam temple where devotees smile at each other." And then there was, I literally, as soon as I saw that, I just went, that's it. Amsterdam. Hare Krishna, Amsterdam. Hippie capital of the world, Hare Krishna, Amsterdam. Perfect. And then it went on and described how great it was. And I thought, that's it. I'm going to, and I just said, that's it. I'm going to go there. And that's what I did. And I'm so glad that Krishna guided me in the way that was so much that was best for me and part of my story, because that's what I'm going to carry on about with my story, because there's a lot to tell, and there's too much to tell in one go, and I'm going to carry on tomorrow with this story and tell you where this story goes. But you can tell that I've already made the decision. I am going to join the Krishna movement and not go to college, but I haven't told college yet, and I actually haven't told my mother. This is going to come tomorrow, all of that part of the story. So bear with me if you're still finding it interesting and you want to know what happens next, or if you've never been a Krishna devotee and you're wondering, what is it like? What happens when you actually join this organization? And you're not just a lay member being interested in visiting, but you're going to go into that. And then you can see all the implications, the shaved heads, the costumes, and all of the, I've been checking it all out. So that's going to be coming in the next part of the story. So thank you for kind of like bearing with me with that. I'm just going to sing one more song, and I think I'm going to sing "Oh India," because I haven't sung that for a while, and here it comes. It's the song that Brad and me wrote about some amazing experiences that I had in India, and that we had together, and it's quite funny, and it's true, and it's about meeting a Baba in Varanasi. But this is all happening. This is jumping forward 1996 when this song it's about that time, and it was written after that. Okay. Well, it's about India in general and our love affair with India. Gather round and hear my story, tales intriguing from afar, how I lost my heart completely in the land called India. On the sweet breeze I went sailing to this world of ancient kings, spun the wheel to seek my fortune, for who knows what tomorrow brings. Camels and cows and rickshaws everywhere, and bright-eyed girls with flowers in their hair, cooking on the corner their chapatis and rice. Paid the dahiwala for a lassi and ice. Porter took my bags up to the hotel room. Baba said he'd see me in the afternoon. When Baba came to see me through his pan-stained teeth, he said, "It's your lucky day. We've got some Mazari Sharif." Oh, India, you'll always be my love affair. There's always been a jewel so rare. There's no one like you anywhere. Oh, India, yes, you're the only one for me. I'm as high as I can ever be, and only 50 quid a key. In the wilds of West Bengal, I met a psychic Sikh called Singh. With just one look and in an instant, he could tell me everything. Something big was gonna happen after I turned 43. Universal mystic forces would reveal my destiny. Took an AC sleeper down to Varanasi. Smoked a wicked chillum, drinking spicy chai tea. Sitting by the Ganges after taking my bath. And when I looked around, there was this Ranjit Nath, a Baba dressed in black and all covered in ash. Hypnotic eyes and garlanded with Shiva Rudraksh. I was taken by surprise, I didn't know what to do. He says, "Welcome, my friend. I've been expecting you." Oh, India, you'll always be my love affair. There's never been a jewel so rare. I think we'd make a lovely pair. Oh, India, yes, you're the only one for me. Sat on the mud under this banyan tree, as happy as can be. Went back to this fellow's duty, where we sat for quite a while. Revealed his deepest secrets to me, passed down through the hands of time. He seemed to touch something inside me. A wave of light engulfed my soul. I took a transcendental journey, the greatest story yet untold. Listen. Kundalini rising like my spine was on fire. Sucked into a vortex passing through my third eye. Chakras started ringing, nails started to ring, and then I watched the heavens open and I saw everything. Past, present, and future all rolled into one. Endless and visions, all that I've ever done. God handed me the script, and as I turned the first page, I was looking at the dawning of a new golden age. Oh, India, you'll always be my love affair. There's never been a jewel so rare. There's no one like you anywhere. Oh, India, yes, you're the only one for me. I wonder what me next door neighbours would say if I took you home to Mum for tea. Bharat Mata ki jai ho. Thank you. It's been wonderful again to have the honor and pleasure of being able to share this with you. I hope everything's all right. From my side, it's all going a bit glitchy. I just hope it's all a bit okay from your side of seeing it. And I'm going to come back tomorrow and carry on. And wherever you are, wherever you're going, whatever you're going through at the moment, for some people, this is they're having a great time. The planet is definitely having a great time at the moment. It is very surreal. It changes day to day. I just wish all the best for everybody and for everyone to stay in their own power. Be sympathetic to the ideas of your fellow friends. And if you do disagree, don't let it come between you, if you can. I know it's very hard. We've been through all sorts of things, haven't we? We've been through Brexit and the elections, and now we've got this, and there's divisiveness. You don't need to get involved in that. So that's my humble kind of advice, really. And try and stay in the love zone and a spiritual zone and in your own power. And in England and in the West, it's beautiful weather at the moment and clean air, and take advantage of the silver linings. And as I've said before, you're all part of the silver lining of what I'm going through. So lots of love, big hugs to you all. Hare Om.